Hello and welcome back to the channel and our reading of St. Matthew's Gospel from the Word on Fire Bible. And today we're going through chapter 17. And the heading is the Transfiguration. 6 days later, Jesus took with him Peter and James and his brother John and led them up a high mountain by themselves. And he was transfigured before them, and his face shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. Suddenly there appeared to them Moses, Elijah, talking with him. Then Peter said to Jesus, "Lord, it is good for us to be here. If you wish, I will make 3 dwellings here, one for you, one for Moses, and one for Elijah." While he was still speaking, suddenly a bright cloud overshadowed them. From the cloud a voice said, "This is my Son, the Beloved, and with him I am well pleased. Listen to him." When the disciples heard this, they fell to the ground, were overcome by fear. But Jesus came and touched them, saying, "Get up and do not be afraid." And when they looked up, they saw no one except Jesus himself alone. As they were coming down the mountain, Jesus ordered them to tell no one about the vision until after the Son of Man has been raised from the dead. And the disciples asked him, "Why then do the scribes say that Elijah must come first?" He replied, "Elijah is indeed coming and will restore all things. But I tell you that Elijah has already come. They did not recognize him, but they did to him whatever they pleased. So also the Son of Man is about to suffer at their hands." Then the disciples understood that he was speaking to them about John the Baptist. When they came to the crowd, a man came to him, knelt before him, and said, "Lord, have mercy on my son, for he is an epileptic and he suffers terribly. He often falls into the fire and often into the water. And I brought him to your disciples, but they could not cure him." Jesus answered, "You faithless and perverse generation, how much longer must I be with you? How much longer must I put up with you? Bring him here to me." Jesus rebuked the demon that came out of him, and the boy was cured instantly. Then the disciples came to Jesus privately and said, "Why could we not cast it out?" He said to them, "Because of your little faith. For truly I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." As they were gathering in Galilee, Jesus said to them, "The Son of Man is going to be betrayed into human hands, and they will kill him, and on the 3rd day he will be raised." And they were greatly distressed. When they reached Capernaum, the collectors of the temple tax came to Peter and said, "Does your teacher not pay the temple tax?" He said, "Yes, he does." When he came home, Jesus spoke of it first, asking, "What do you think, Simon? From whom do kings of the earth take toll or tribute? From their children or from others?" When Peter said, "From others," Jesus said to him, "Then the children are free. However, so that we do not give offense to them, go to the sea and cast a hook. Take the first fish that comes up, and when you open its mouth, you will find a coin. Take that and give it to them for you and for me." Then we have some commentary from Bishop Barron in relation to this chapter. And the first commentary is entitled "The Strange Light," and it's in relation to verses 1 to 8. Frequently, in the course of the liturgical year, the Church invites us to reflect on this strange story of the transfiguration of the Lord. In all 3 of the synoptic Gospels, we hear that Jesus went up to the high mountain, that place of contact with God, and was there transfigured in the presence of 3 of his disciples. His face, Matthew tells us, shone like the sun, and his clothes became dazzling white. This luminous transformation of Jesus has bedazzled mystics and inspired artists and poets throughout the Christian centuries. There's a terrific depiction of the scene in one of the stained glass windows of the facade of Chartres Cathedral, when at the close of the day the setting sun shines directly on this particular window. The figure of Jesus does indeed become incandescent, glowing like a jewel. What does this event mean, and why does the Church ask us to meditate upon it so regularly? Thomas Aquinas devotes an entire question to the third part of the Summa Theologia in consideration of the Transfiguration. And his treatment sums up much of the wisdom of the Church Fathers on this matter. So let us attend with some care to his interpretation. Aquinas says that it was fitting for Christ to be manifested in his glory to his select apostles, because those who walk an arduous path need a clear sense of the goal of their journey. The arduous path that Thomas speaks of is this life, with all its attendant sufferings, failures, setbacks, disappointments, anxieties, injustices. Beset by all of this negativity, a pilgrim on life's way can easily succumb to despair unless he's granted a glimpse of the glory that comes at the end of his striving. And this is why Aquinas argues Jesus, while on his way to the cross, for a brief moment allows the light to shine through him. This is why he permits the end of the journey to appear, however fleetingly, in the midst of the journey. Though we live and move within the confines of this world of space and time, we are not meant finally for this dimensional system. We're summoned to life on high with God in a transformed state of existence. Transfiguration, therefore, awakens our sense of wonder and steels our courage to face the darkness here below. Next, Aquinas inquires more precisely after the light that is said to have shone from the face and figure of Christ. A resurrected body, Thomas says, has four distinctive qualities. Impassibility, it's beyond suffering. Agility, it can move freely. Subtly, it's not obstructed by material obstacles. And clarity, it shines. Why have people through history and across cultures associated holiness with light? Why are the saints in our tradition pictured with luminous halos around their heads? Why have some people, even in our own time, seen a sort of glow emanating from particularly spiritual figures such as St. Teresa of Calcutta and Padre Pio? One reason, Thomas suggests, is that light is the quality by which we see. Holy people provide a sort of interpretive grid to our experience. Their form of life turns on the light that allows us to perceive the truth of things more clearly. But the most fundamental reason that we associate holiness with light is that light is beautiful and sanctity is beautiful above all. Aquinas says that Jesus at the Transfiguration began to shine with the radiance of heaven so as to entrance us with the prospect of our own beautiful transfiguration. After considering Jesus himself, Thomas turns to the witness of the event. Two are figures from Israelite history, Moses and Elijah, and three are contemporaries of Jesus, Peter, James, and John. This juxtaposition of past and present is important, Aquinas maintains, because the salvation won by Christ properly transcends time, drawing into its power those who came before and those who would come after. Moses and Elijah symbolize the past. The apostles, who would carry the gospel to the world, signify the future. All dimensions of time are drawn toward the magnetic point of the cross and resurrection. The same collapsing of the distinctions between the modalities of time occurs at the Mass, when the past is brought to the present and the present is carried to the eschatological fulfillment at the end of time. Moses, Elijah, Peter, James, and John are therefore a kind of prototype of the Eucharistic community. But we can also speak of each of these characters more specifically. Moses stands for the law, the Torah. Jesus is consistently presented in the Gospels as the fulfillment of the Torah and as the new Moses. Thus, even as a child, he is, like Moses, hunted down. When he gives the Sermon on the Mount, he appears as the Mosaic lawgiver par excellence. The Gospels imply that what was presented to Moses on tablets of stone has been offered perfectly through Jesus. The order and logic of God, visible truly but inadequately through the commands, prohibitions, and practices of the old law, are now fully, personally, and compellingly present in Jesus himself. This is why he can say, "Do not think that I have come to abolish the law or the prophets." He is not so much a better lawgiver than Moses as he is the law made flesh. Correlation between these two revelations of the divine order is eloquently expressed in the conversation between Moses and Jesus. And Elijah stands for prophecy, for he was generally perceived as the greatest of the prophets. Elijah, Elisha, Amos, Isaiah, Jeremiah, Ezekiel, Daniel, and all of their prophetic confreres spoke the truth about God to varying degrees of intensity and in relation to various circumstances. But Jesus is not simply one more speaker of divine truth, not merely the greatest of the prophets. He is the divine word. He is in person and in its entirety what all the prophets witnessed to from the outside and in fragmentary ways. It is this analogical relationship between truth and truth-telling that is on display in the conversation between Jesus and Elijah. Both Moses and Elijah evanesce in the presence of Jesus, finding themselves by losing themselves, saying with John the Baptist, "He must increase, but I must decrease." Finally, Thomas turns to contemporary witnesses. Why is Peter there? Because, says Aquinas, he loved the Lord the most. After the resurrection, Jesus asked Peter, "Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these?" When he receives a positive answer, he commands Peter to feed his sheep. Why is John there? Because he is the one whom the Lord loved the most. We know that throughout the gospel that bears his name, John is referred to indirectly as the disciple whom Jesus loved. What is implied here is something that the theologian Hans Urs von Balthasar intuited, that those who understand Jesus are those who enter into a relationship of love with him. Getting him is not so much a matter of clarity of mind as intensity of affection. Conversely, those who don't understand him, the Pharisees, the rich young man, Judas, and Pilate come readily to mind, are those who refused his friendship. Therefore, Peter and John saw the transfiguration not because they were the cleverest or most powerful among the apostles, but because they had fallen in love with the Lord. Now, why was James permitted to see the vision? Because Thomas says James was the first of Jesus' intimate followers to prove the intensity of his love for Christ by giving his life. He would become the first martyr among the apostles. Lovers desiring the good of the other as other. Therefore, there's no greater test of love than one's willingness to die for the object of one's love. This is the test that James would endure. This is why James was privileged to see. The meaning of the Old Testament revelation, the goal of the spiritual journey, the nature of the resurrected life, the condition for the possibility of seeing the Lord, all of it is illumined in the strange light of the Transfiguration. And next we have a commentary from Bishop Barron entitled, "Do You Have Enough Faith?" in relation to verses 14 to 20. Here we meet a boy with a demon whom the disciples could not heal. They asked Jesus why they had failed, and he said, "Because of your little faith. For truly I tell you, if you have faith the size of a mustard seed, you will say to this mountain, 'Move from here to there,' and it will move. Nothing will be impossible for you." In all circumstances, you have to pray with faith. Jesus says, before working one miracle, "Do you believe that I am able to do this?" And once Matthew tells us, He was unable to perform many miracles because he met with so little faith from among the people. Many people today, especially in the healing ministry, seem able to reproduce what Jesus did, precisely because of the purity of their faith. Is part of the problem simply a lack of faith? Perhaps. We allow our skepticism to get the better of us. We're just a little embarrassed by asking God for things, or we're convinced that he's a distant power only vaguely connected to our lives. But God is far greater than that. And next we have commentary from Fulton Sheen. Why did Jesus pay the temple tax? In relation to verses 24 to 27. The question about our Lord paying the temple tax was not a simple one. He had said that he was the temple of God and had exercised his divine rights over the material temple by purging it of buyers and sellers. Would he, who said that he was a temple of God because divinity was dwelling in his human nature, now pay the temple tribute? To pay the temple tax after his clear affirmation at the Festival of Booths that he was the Son of God would have given rise to some serious misunderstandings. The point at issue was not the poverty of the master, it was whether or not he who is the living temple of God would subordinate himself to the symbol and sign of himself. And having affirmed that as the King of Heaven he was immersed from earthly tributes, he turned to Peter and said, "However, so that we do not give offence to them, go to the sea and cast a hook. Take the first fish that comes up, and when you open its mouth, you will find a coin. Take that and give it to them for you and me." The king's son is free, but he who is the Son of God became the Son of Man, sharing the poverty, trials, the labours and the homelessness of men. Later on, he would subject himself to arrest, the crown of thorns, and to the cross. Presently, as the Son of Man, he would not stand on his dignity as the Son of God, nor claim immunity from servile obligations, but would voluntarily concede to a tax in order to avoid scandal. It's not a mark of greatness always to affirm one's right, but often to suffer an indignity. There might be scandal if he showed contempt for the temple, as he submitted himself to John's baptism to fulfill all righteousness, as his mother offered doves, though she needed no purification from his birth, so he would submit himself to the tax to sanctify the human bonds he wore. Thanks for listening.